What is up, everybody? Welcome back. This is the Fantasy Football World Series Invitational show, and we're doing something a little different tonight. We are doing a player spotlight, and there was an obvious man to choose. A winner, a past winner, a winner on our platform, a winner on every platform. We're running it back here. This is a man who kills it in the blockchain streets by day, crushes it in the NFL DFS streets by night. A man with six-figure cashes in each of the last 3 years, including 100 dimes in week 4 of this NFL season. A man who did over 30,000 best ball drafts last summer. A man who was an OG Carolina Millions finalist on Fantasy Draft. I mean, if you know what that is, you know this man is legit. But most importantly, this is the winner of quarter 1 of the Fantasy Football World Series Invitational, and that is Mr. Justin Herzig.
Wow, that was quite the introduction. I would have been more than happy with just the top of the list, the Q1 winner for the FFWS, but that was extremely impressive. Don't know what to say.
Well, I'd say the impressive nature of that list comes from you, not from me. So that's what I'd roll with. And, of course, we are joined by the man, the brains behind the operation, Dan Crabtree. What's going on?
How you doing?
Good, boss. Good.
Yeah, I'm excited for this. Justin was one of our premier gets for the league. So we had a feeling that he'd do well in it. And didn't know it would happen quite so soon, but shouldn't be surprised. Anybody who can accommodate to different contests and be a winner across platforms was probably going to do really well in a contest like this. So happy to have him on. Can't wait to dive into some of his wisdom in fantasy football, as well as some other things that we can get into.
Absolutely. Justin, first thing that came to mind with me, are you the best fantasy football player that most people haven't heard of yet?
No, not even close. I don't think maybe I'm the best that my family's even heard of. And even then, I think I might not even be best in this household. But
That's fair, man. That's fair. Yo, what do you got going on behind you there? What's we movie posters or what do we got above you?
These are Richmond, Virginia. A local artist made some prints of 4. We've got a couple over there as well. But some of the main monuments. And so I spent first 5-6 years at college in Richmond, which was people headquarters for Capital One. So kind of got my career there started and really enjoyed my time there and kind of wanted to bring a piece of it home to Florida, which is where I now live.
Beautiful. Yo, how's it feel to be the second best mustache in Florida behind Gardner Minshew?
Hey, what is it? Halloween's in 2 weeks. I'll look just like him. Don't worry. Jorts and everything.
You got to get a little of that Fu Man going.
There's a Salvador Dali museum here in St. Petersburg. So if I twist it right up, we'll get a little of that too.
Oh, that's nice. All right, man. How'd you get started in fantasy football?
Yeah. Story's probably not too dissimilar from the early days of just, growing up playing sports. Actually, in college days, I got through being a sports agent. And so I worked for a sports agency representing baseball clients. And so my world, was always devoted around sports. And then senior year of college, had to make a decision whether or not I go on the road and do some scouting for an agency or selling out and going corporate. And I am no longer with an agency. And so I took the corporate route, did some business analysis kind of things, and met some good friends who, figured, hey, we were all interested, did a fantasy football league together and thought that we could take kind of our analytic mindset and take it to fantasy sports. And those were the probably early days of DFS. And we weren't that good, but I think early days, even today, I still consider myself like an edge player. I overemphasize process, and because I got the full day job, I've really got to consider like a wise allocation of my time. So work smarter, not harder. And in those early days, it was over like finding some of the overlay on some of those sites, realizing that, hey, these are what is maybe necessary to build a bankroll. And then early days as well, I was on the draft app, had a name that I actually changed my name midway through to 4-Leaf Clover. And the funny story was because I was playing in their MLB days, and surprisingly, I would look at the weather and realize when it was going to rain and not play the guys that was going to rain. And the people I was going against, like all the time, I would just get these messages. Oh, I'm so lucky. It rained. Oh, how could we have foreseen that? And I just had to be like, yeah, I'm just really lucky. And, just had to consider, like, maybe we could actually use this as a process standpoint. And that was probably playing for pennies and dollars back in the day. But like, it was those kind of edge that I think have just progressed over time.
Dude, you're so lucky to get the weather. A lot of us like don't have any access to like a weatherman or a weather app or anything like that. That's a huge app.
Well, when you don't have a person whose full day job that started a couple of years ago for some big sites doing weather every day, there was no way to check it ourselves. And and like Jeremy Levine, loved the guy, but I would always call his draft app the poop app. And not like because it was a shit app or anything, but the majority of people playing on it were playing when they're on the pooper. And so if you're willing to, use a little edge, be a little smarter in the way that you're going about your process, there's an opportunity.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's our first takeaway, right? Don't play while you poop.
Yeah. Don't shit in draft or you get a shitty draft. That's just how it rolls.
Lesson number one, right? If you're listening at home, write that down. That's rule number one that we've learned from Justin today. It is a little bit curious that you sold out on sports and left to be a corporate dude, and then sports came back for you. Came back to make you money, really.
It's true. I did an internship way back in the day for the Lightning, and I got some really good advice for someone that said, if you love sports so much, if you turn it into work, you may lose the one thing that you truly love. And I think that kind of helped me in my guidance too. And it's probably something that I think about still today, is if I was to go full time for something in fantasy sports. Obviously, there's additional risk and all, but it really then turns into a full-time job. And I think a lot of us who have taken this a bit more seriously, you lose that ability to really cheer on a team. I don't know, like I'm in Tampa, I'm still a Rays fan, but when you don't have that, money on it, when you don't have the actual DFS on it, you definitely lose a bit of a sensitivity to it.
Yeah, that's true. That makes sense. My daughter does a lot of work and I still love them though. So I challenge.
I mean, you can't be that big a Rays fan because the game's on right now and you're chumming it up with us, right?
I see you right now, top of the 6, 2 outs, 3-2.
Live update, man. Should this guy be running the live numbers on our site or what?
Yeah.
Look at this real-time update.
We need an update every hour on the hour.
There you go. This other company called me to do their live scoring, but I was too busy.
I'm curious. So you kind of talked about like what made you want to take fantasy football to the next level, but what were the actual like steps? Like walk us through it at a very micro level. Like if somebody is at home thinking, hey, I want to be good at this. I play most of the time while I poop. I know I'm doing that wrong, but what, like after they wash their hands and get up, like what other things could they do to obviously not reach your level because that's impossible almost, but to be almost as good as Justin, like what are the micro processes along the way?
Yeah, and I went through this in a progression. If you were to look at my Roto Tracker chart, you'll see the first probably 3 years of playing this, other than like maybe one big hit, it's a pretty flat line. It goes up very small because there really was a learning process for this. And I had my own progression. And I think what I would say is the first thing that I really tried to do is identify who was the best and not really, I wasn't aspiring to be the best. I was just trying to learn who was the best and who was the best at different areas. At the time, it was who was the best at projections, who was the best at providing updates, who was the best at roster construction. And so that was my kind of going to school and learning from them and willing to, take that initial step to, hey, I know that these are the top names and I want to see what they are doing. And I feel like, a few years ago, that was probably more, it was more important. I think now when you've gotten to a place with where, a lot of these touts, the sites, the optimizers, the game has really changed, but I think those basics are still very important. I think nowadays, if I was to boil it down to what are kind of the 3 most important things, I'd say it's 1, contest selection, 2, game theory, and 3 is kind of finding a niche. So with that first one, contest selection, I don't know, I've kind of gotten to the point and belief of, because majority of people are using these projections, using optimizers, your projection at the end of the day, it really doesn't matter that much. We're all going to be within, a close amount. The level of variance is probably greater than the actual projection. So really it comes out to is, where can we find edge? And in a contest selection, I think that's a big one. This includes making sure that you are playing the right lineup for that kind of contest. It includes finding potentially weaker opponents. And at the end of the day, you're not trying to be the best in the game. You're just trying to beat whoever is in that contest. And it gets a bit more nuanced than that when you have opportunities. And let's say we're playing a single game showdown and we see that this is going to be a really chalky lineup. And on those nights, I'm probably trying to play as many 5-mans, as many tournaments as possible, because I know that the majority of people are just throwing in that one chalky lineup, especially if it's something like FanDuel where there's not much variance and stuff, and you just have the 5 players, the one captain, knowing that, yeah, I'm taking a lineup that has a lesser chance of actually winning, but when I'm right, I win more. And I think that's a positive, a strong mantra all throughout.
Justin, to speak to that point there, do you think it becomes plus EV to be minus EV in spots like that? So you're just recognizing the fact that the lineup you chuck together is probably minus EV, but it's going to be plus EV because if the payout's going to be significantly bigger. Does that make sense?
I wouldn't say it's minus AV, but it is not projected to win. I accept that I am taking a player that 40% of the time is not going to outscore someone else. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, in a lineup where there's a 5-man, and I'm playing against these people a lot. So it's the same players. You can get a general idea of what their strategy, what their behaviors are. And in general, the difference between, let's say, a Sammy Watkins and McCall Hardman, Sammy Watkins might outscore him 55, 60% of the time. Maybe his projection for this game is 2 points more or something. I'm okay with taking the worst player in some instances if I know that I'm going to be unique there. Because in a 5-man, you're paying $50 to win. You're paying, trying to math right now, but with the edge.
There's no math on this show.
No, not at all.
This is a non-math show.
But at the end of the day, if you win a 5-man, you only have to win that 25% of the time to be profitable about.
Yeah,
that covers your rig. And
it feels like, it feels like sit and goes. Did you ever play sit and go like poker tournaments? Nope. It feels very similar in the game theory associated with playing those shorthanded sit and goes.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the people back in the day said the highest ROI you were going to have are on these 6- and 9-man sit and goes during the cash days. Yeah. Now, whether or not you want, the difference is with DFS, I can put in the same level of effort and go enter 100 different 5-mans, 3-mans, and so forth. Sit and goes, you can only play maybe a few at a time if you're playing online and one in person or so forth. But there's a lot of the same kind of strategy, especially if you're playing against the same players.
Yeah. Speaking of that effort there, when you did the 30K best ball draft summer, how many man hours do you think you put in outside of projections, and you were always working on your process and that sort of thing? How many man hours do you genuinely think you put in behind the computer clicking on drafts?
So not as much as you think for that process, because I was able to automate it, not using any kind of program or anything like that, but with draft software, you were able to set your rankings and then put those drafts through. And the majority of those drafts were actually 3-man. And what I realized is that in a 3-man draft, yes, there is some edge to if you're going to do some stacks and correlation, and there's value for if you have the second pick, knowing that the guy at the turn already has filled out for a roster spot, so you choose whatever. And being in that draft, there is additional expected value. However, what I realized through testing is that I was willing to give up some of that edge at the lower stakes and in exchange get more volume. So I would just draft 100, because you just go and you put in 99 and you max them out, and they would just always be going. And I mean, to some, it said it wasn't the greatest experience, because if you were to go into the lobbies, you were pretty much only playing against me. And then the other side is draft was loving it because there was no wait time, because whenever you wanted to play, there was always someone to play. And to be honest, if you were being smart in drafting, you probably should have had an edge on me, because I was not there. I was purely automating it, and you could find opportunities to go against that and take advantage of it. But I realized,
I remember playing against the 4-leaf clover, now knowing that it's you, and drafting 3-mans versus it, and like the snap, like picking of it and like that sort of deal. And I just kept sitting there being like, fuck this guy, man. He's so sharp. Like, why is he picking so quick and stuff? Like, I knew it was auto picked, but I still was just kind of like, man, get this guy out of here. So my counter strat to the way that you were doing that, when I saw that you were in my 3-mans, I started stacking tight ends early, but I think it made me a sick fish too. I don't know, because I was just kind of like, I was like, this guy, I have to capitalize on like the one thing he wouldn't be ranking like that high, but then it wasn't tight end premium. So I kind of like, in retrospect, was like, maybe I just lit it on fire and handed it all to Justin.
I mean, hey, to be honest, this is probably a decent strategy. So if I think back to that year, my rankings were Saquon 1, Christian 2, Kelsey 3. There were even arguments that sometimes you should move Kelsey up to 2. So there were a couple other high stakes guys who were playing a bunch. Peter Jennings would be in there a whole bunch. And when we're going against each other, your value above replacement player basically made Kelsey almost the number 1 draft pick, arguably the 1, definitely 2 or 3. But when I'm playing in a lower stake and high volume, I was realizing that there were times that I could actually get Kelsey with the 6th pick, with the 7th pick.
Right.
So I need to determine, because I'm automating it, what point is it worth it for me to actually say, hey, I want to make sure I get him? Because even if he is at value at number 2, I'm getting maybe a little value because he's not that much more valuable than the next guy. But if I have an opportunity to get him at the 6-7 and maybe pair that with Kittle like 6-7, now I've got a significant edge. And so across my entire portfolio, it was worth it for me to give up some edge in some drafts to give someone Kelsey at 4 or 5, knowing that the majority of those, or not majority, but enough of them that makes it worth it. I'm getting Kelsey and Kittle and so forth at that 6, 7, 8, 9. And that gives me such a head start from an expected value over the rest.
Right. That makes a lot of sense, because my first thought process to counter was like, when I saw like the process of those 3 men, was I wanted Kelsey 1 and I wanted Kittle 6. And if I could go stack and then just bank from there on like, because like the 10th running back that you were getting on those teams was still like had a shot at top 12 output, right? I don't know. It just thinking back on it, I don't know. It's just interesting. But let's move into more of the specifics associated with this league. So now that we've been talking a little best ball and stuff like that, it's a nice little pivot point to let's see if we can get this going here. We can talk, let's talk first about the Q1 win. So the finalized roster from the Q1 win, there it is. We can probably easier to walk through the draft board a little bit here. What was your strat coming in?
Yeah, I think it came down to, so strategy going in is because it was pre-week 1, I built my own projections, and I really based it off of a couple of factors. One is it was before the season, so your baseline of just your normal ADP and your normal, draft rankings for any kind of league wasn't too far off. I tried to customize it, and there were no bye weeks, so there wasn't too much modification. I did customize it a bit for your schedule. And doing that actually, I think, is what was probably the difference between finishing first and middle of the pack. Because even with my very first pick, had a very difficult decision. Do I go with Alvin Kamara or do I go with Saquon Barkley?
Yeah,
by all accounts.
The Saquon falling there was just, I'm just looking at this now. The names at the top have repopulated just because we did another draft after it. So this draft order is actually the Q2 draft order. For those watching and looking at this, this is in fact Justin's team under Noah's name coming down here. So you started with Kamara. So yeah, that Kamara Saquon decision. What went through your head there?
Yeah, and so when I was doing my rankings ahead of time, I put Alvin ahead of Saquon, and a lot of it had to do with that Giants schedule was just horrendous for the first 4 weeks. Mm-hmm. Don't remember off the top of my head, but I had it, I think, as the most difficult schedule from a standpoint, especially for running backs, even with a person like Saquon who's expecting to get the pass catches. And then on the other extreme is we just love the same schedule. Obviously things fell to the extremes of both sides where Saquon goes down, Michael Thomas goes down. So Alvin Kamara's stats, whenever you have MT out, is just phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And so I think hindsight, makes it seem like obvious it was the right decision. But at the time, it was definitely a lot of it had to do with I was big on Kamara going into the season, and schedules just kind of tilted it over the edge.
You said, I noticed you said we there. Was that a slip, or did you have somebody help you prepare for this?
No, definitely. I guess I was probably using universal we. Now, yeah.
We all drafted Kamara. We all wished we did, at least.
We all drafted alongside you.
There you go. Yeah. I mean,
we all won.
We're just a team together right now. We're all together.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I thought that was really interesting. A couple of comments on Twitter I also thought were interesting and just kind of highlighted for me. We just typically we have 2 tracks. We think in terms of DFS or season long. And I saw a couple of season long players hop in like Hubbard and say that Noah picked the best team. And when you start off with Saquon at 6, you're already like that thought is already in your head. And then you review the rest of his draft. Obviously, I thought he drafted well, despite taking Saquon at 6 was probably the right answer anyways. But I just thought it was interesting. No, if you think about it, if you take a DFS mindset and think about the schedule, Saquon's not the best pick here, and Kamara is, and that bore out over 4 weeks. So yeah, I thought that was quite the sharp pick. I wanted to post it on Twitter right away, but John was like, let's see how it goes. And fortunately it worked out for you.
I was the pump the brakes guy there.
No, I mean, even during the draft, Noah's extremely sharp, and Noah was even saying hey, if you would have given me the choice between Alvin and Saquon, it would have been a very difficult decision. I don't know if he would have leaned, which way, but his team did look great. I know coming out of that draft, a lot of our, both of our teams, I felt took a very similar strategy of taking that robust RB start and then building from there.
Yeah, let's talk about that. You went runner, and then tight end. So you didn't take a wide receiver until the 5th round. Roster construction, best player available. What was going on there for you?
Yeah, so I think we really have to start with a robust RB. I think a lot of people were just going with the same mindset of I'm just going to draft similar to I would for a full season. But the truth is, if you're taking that kind of modified zero RB strategy, you're expecting that there's going to be injuries and you have more time for your players to kind of show. You also have the opportunity to use waivers to kind of build up. Yes, we had waivers here, but there's just not as much time for things to come to fruition. So I wanted to make sure that I just hammered that RB position early on. Wasn't planning on taking a 3rd running back in the 3rd after getting Kamara and Drake, but Chubb was just too good a value to pass on. I think that was a bit of a fancy play syndrome by a lot of people because he was industry was a bit lower on him with the Kareem Hunt aspect, but it fell into place.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, John.
Was that a planned stack? Once he took Chubb to be like, yo, I got to get Hunt on the way back? Or was that just a value fell back to you kind of deal?
I've been drafting Hunt all season. Absolutely love him and especially in this where you've got enough flex spots, you need to get that kind of value with the upside. And he felt so perfectly there. And to be honest, I was low on Chubb going into the season as well. If you go to my best ball portfolio, it's far more Hunt than Chubb, probably very little Chubb. But in this scenario, and both had it was a favorable schedule as well. Starting the year, expected them to kind of lean on that run, take with the new coaching staff heading over and using a 2 RB. And the truth is, we didn't know which one was going to really emerge as the lead because you've got that new coaching structure. And so always knew that I prioritized Hunt, loved it, and have no problem grabbing the both in this format.
You're definitely the happiest Chubb owner in the country right now because you had him while he was active and then didn't when he wasn't.
Exactly.
So that cool Chubb, baby.
That's why we only draft the first 4 weeks, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Man, looking back on this board, because admittedly hadn't looked back on it recently, just seeing this smash of first of all, the Chubb smash, but smash. Allen was a smash. Miller was a decent floor guy, and then coming back with Robbie Anderson in the 11th just looks sharp as hell now. So that's pretty dope, man. Well done.
Yeah, and the last thing I would say about this is that Buffalo stack was definitely something I had my eye on before the draft. Big Josh Allen believer.
Allen? Yeah.
Yeah, big Josh Allen believer. Got the MVP bets on him before the season. and believed that he was just a great value to go with that kind of schedule. Was hoping to actually get John Brown a little early as well on the comeback, because if you can see, the Josh Allen was moving to the left, and then I think Wade took John Brown in that first spot when I was going to grab him on the wrap back around. But I think just getting still that Allen and Diggs stack was very valuable.
Yeah, I remember from the offseason, there was one camp report, that in like it must have been like a 20 throw session, 17 targets went to Diggs from Allen. So at that point, I was like, I think I signed up for a best ball draft 5 minutes after I heard that. I was like, I got to get this guy. So good for you, man.
And the truth is, usually I'm scared of wide receivers going to a new team. But I think you can kind of make an exception when you see that teams are, they have that need for the actual male to alpha to get in there. And then obviously they gave up so much to get him. It was just such a strong fit with Josh Allen.
Yeah. Yep. Agreed. I think that a premier receiver takes his targets with him. So I loved Hopkins and Diggs coming into the year. So glad it worked out for you. Do you want to go on to Q2, John?
Yeah, so we're moving into Q2 here now. So you book the win, you get 12 points, you get the 500 cool USD under your belt. You put it straight into Ethereum. I know it. and you bounce into Q2 here in what is admittedly your best format, best ball, question mark?
I would say definitely probably one of my stronger ones. Definitely felt like I had an advantage going in.
Okay. So not a great week one, but let's see what we're rolling with here. Actually, I think it'd be better to look at the draft board here. So what went into the strat here with your build?
Yeah, so same thing. Made some new projections for this. Obviously, there are a bit more, variables that we had to factor in. First off is how are we actually evaluating a buy? For me, I used a pretty simple formula and just said that a buy was worth a half a game. So I kind of took that from projection. I think you don't have to count it for the full game because it is best ball style. So it's not like you're having to make a decision on which of my more, later scrubs do I want to put in, but you're just taking the best case.
Right.
And I think overall I prioritized at the top of the draft. I really wanted to go for guys that had upside. So willing to take a buy if you've got a guy that has the upside, has the strong schedule. Middle of the draft, you can see I was probably going for a bit more, just kind of getting opportunities. And at the end of the draft is where I really wanted to prioritize the tails of the schedule, the wide receivers that had the really great schedules, and they weren't going to have as many buys because the difference in players when you get back there, go for the upside and just hope, more dart throws.
See, when I look at this board, Justin, like I find the first 5 picks like so interesting. I see the Julio, the Galladay, and the Deshaun Watson as just like slam dunk, like, these are studs that are still on the board that I have to grab these studs now kind of deal. But the first 5 picks I find really interesting because Dalvin's clearly got the bye. Amari is this a heat check? Like, is this guy actually this good? He's been coming off like stellar performance. What was he after the first 4 weeks? Like WR like 3, 4, 5 in that range kind of deal.
Might even been PPR 1. I think he was averaging 13 targets a game, nearly 100 yards a game of those 4.
Yeah, so him and Calvin Ridley were those 2 like quote unquote heat check guys where it's like, are we buying them hard in this quarter or are we not buying them kind of deal? And then 2 very interesting picks with the Montgomery, which I mean, I've called him Monte Ball in disguise. I've said that multiple times because I don't think he's very good, but I guess volume's king in this aspect. And then Joshua Kelly, where it was just kind of like right after the Eckler news. So, just some general thoughts on those first 4 rounds.
Yeah, so starting off with Dalvin, I had him 6th overall in my rankings, and it was a very close between him and Sanders. And Sanders doesn't have the bye, but Sanders had 2 games. I think one was against Pittsburgh, one against Baltimore. Obviously, he did well hindsight against Pittsburgh, but those are 2 very difficult matchups, even for a pass catcher like Sanders. Dalvin, on the other hand, had fantastic schedule for his 3 games. I think it was Seattle. Let me see. It was Seattle, Atlanta, and Green Bay. And for a running back, passing game running back, that was just high ups that he could have 3 just huge weeks there. And you can see overall, I knew that I wanted to keep that robust RB strategy. And so let's see. So let's start with the next one. Amari Cooper, big on that Dallas offense, and obviously hindsight now we know what happened to Dak, and it's very unfortunate. But that defense is just atrocious, and Dak was going to have to continue to pass. He wasn't going to average his 400 plus yards a game, but we saw that Amari was averaging 13 targets a game, nearly 100 yards a game in a PPR format where it's best ball. He has a higher ceiling than just about anyone else out there.
Right.
So I loved that pick. I was very happy with it, taking kind of a stud wide receiver and know that, hey, if I got one in here, I can then find some upside guys later on. And then for Montgomery and Kelly. So Montgomery was an easy one for me. Once Tariq Cohen went down, that next game, and we see it with Nick Foles, I think he had either 6 or 8 targets. You see him playing 80% of the snaps. Mm-hmm. They're really using him as a bell cow. And when you only have Allen Robinson as your only other guy, they're going to use him in the passing game. We've seen it the past 2 games. Really expect that offense is going to continue to drive through him. And I'm not a huge fan of his talent. I wouldn't say that, I've got him other places. Agree with Monty Ball. You've got guy in snowshoes trudging through snow and stuff. But nope, it's about volume, and especially pass catching volume. And he's proven it right in that first game. And I think he's going to continue to have some success over the next 3 games. So no concerns there. Mm-hmm. Josh Kelly was a tough one. Josh Kelly was a situation. Jonathan Taylor went right before it, which I actually had Jonathan Taylor ranked higher, even though Jonathan Taylor had the bye, just from hopeful of increased usage and that ceiling. And with Josh Kelly, it was a combination of not having the bye. The LAC schedule is fantastic to the point that they're just going to have, you're expecting 4 shootouts. And we saw he's getting the goal line work. So when you're talking best ball, we're seeing he's got the possibility of getting some of that pass catching work. He's getting the clear goal line work. He has as high of a ceiling as just about any of the running backs not inside the top probably 5 or 6. And so, 1 game through, Justin Jackson probably has a bit more of a role than I'd like to see, but I'm still okay with the process behind that pick.
Absolutely. So you got sniped on, let's see, who did you get sniped on? Jonathan Taylor. Did you get sniped? I thought during the draft that you said something about getting sniped on Kittle, but that's not true.
No, I would have definitely taken Kittle there.
Okay.
At the very beginning. So I think if I'm pulling up my rankings real quick, they started off at Kelsey and Kittle is 3-4.
Just tell us the people in front of you who took the wrong players.
Let's see. I won't say wrong players, but I will say that Kareem Hunt was definitely interesting that high. It was a major show of faith that he was going to get a good amount of that work with a difficult schedule. And then I think grabbing Devontae Adams is the one that I'll say was probably a bit too risky. Grabbing a wide receiver with that, injury that we're still expecting to miss another game.
Injury plus bye, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I was when we talked about Hunt before in like the preview show, I was down on. I wouldn't have taken him in the first round even, but in hindsight, maybe I like Ernest too much. Maybe I just like his name. You remember those old movies, Ernest Goes to Camp? You remember that? Yeah. All I could think about was Ernest Goes to Camp, man. I got to get this guy so I can tweet that one day.
Have you ever seen the video of the high school kid called the coldest to ever do it? Some kid in high school who's actually like low key nasty, who's like, grade 10 or whatever. And they're like building him up, and then they flash the graphic of what his name was, and he turned into like a viral meme because his name was the coldest to ever do it. And then they interview his dad being like, oh, he's the coldest to ever do it, like kind of deal, like setting him up like this. It's all I ever think when I read the Ernest Johnson's name. All I hear in my head is just the coldest over and over.
That's awesome. You're supposed to name your kids to be what you want them to be, so.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. This guy's way ahead of the curve.
Why dress it up in like some English name? Just do it, man. Just go for it.
Just be earnest.
Anywhere else you got sniped?
Let's see. So I know at the time I was a little upset with the Brandon Cooks one. So I think down there around about 13, 14. And it was a little payback because I had been sniping those guys all night with Ben Gratch. But wanted that Cooks to stack with a Deshaun Watson. Turns out, I decided to stick with my LIC, even though I'm not getting Justin Herbert, who got drafted quite high, I think in the 8th. I still was loving that schedule and what was going to happen there. So still went with the Mike Williams and my $50 man at the end there, guy.
Yeah, that was sharp.
Yeah. Did you take that? Was it plus EV to take that guy because you were getting $50 or?
Money in the bank, you got to take that.
You got to take the money in the bank.
But if you look at my strategy for the wide receivers, I mean, it was a best ball strategy. You got Deshaun Jackson, you got Mike Williams, you got Guyton, all guys in a one play can really make value. I think one thing that kind of surprised me through the draft is I saw that people were kind of valuing injuries, or so devaluing people as a result of potential injuries, even when it was kind of questionable. So when you see Jared Cook right there was the 21st tight end off the board.
Wow.
And for someone that preseason,
this is a no math show.
1, 2, 3. But yeah, so Jared Cook, 21st tight end off the board. Preseason, he was probably being drafted around like number 10 or so. He was the games that he was in, you saw that he was being used. You had a chance to not have Michael Thomas for that first game. That just felt like a must grab. And I think Mike Williams is another example where someone, he was questionable, but the reports were looking kind of favorable that he would play, or at least trending upward. And to get him that late with the upside is just phenomenal.
That same thought process plays in well to the Julio, the Galladay one, and I imagine like you probably got sniped by Gretsch on them on the Chris Godwin one as well.
Yep.
Because those three guys are like, oh my God, like third round, all before the first 3 rounds, talent wise, and they're all just sitting there because of. I mean, Dan and I talked about it beforehand on the other show to like kind of fade the hamstring guys, Dan was saying, but there comes a point where these guys are just sitting there, right? Like,
yeah. Yep.
Especially Galladay. Like, I don't think he's even going to miss a game. He had the bye the first game, and theoretically the bye is the least impactful that first one because only 2 teams were on bye, and theoretically all my guys were healthy going into that. But I think coming out of the draft, like, it's going to be a tough quarter for me. I think obviously losing Dalvin, losing Dak with the Cooper connection. But from there, I don't know. Otherwise, I feel pretty decent about it because I knew I wasn't going to do well that first week anyways, missing a decent amount of guys on bye and then also having Julio and a couple other Deshaun injuries. So I think I'm still in fighting range, but it'll be an uphill battle. Missing my first round draft pick and having a completely severely crippled second rounder in Cooper now.
Yo, Justin, can we talk? Can we just talk about like a random overarching concept that you kind of just brought up there, where or maybe you didn't bring it up, but I just heard it in my head, kind of deal, where the noise and the variance associated with this, because you can walk through your thought process and be like, and we can both sit here and be like, damn, that was sharp to go with that, but you can never account for the fact that Dalvin and Dak are going to go down, and then your first 2 round picks are immediately affected in a format like this. When Dan was designing this format and this sort of thing, the overarching idea is that you could find really good fantasy football players by trying to eliminate some of the noise with injuries and that sort of thing by drafting in quarters. Do you think it is possible in like a format such as this to fully eliminate the noise and variance to definitively find the best players?
No, impossible. I mean, at the end of the day, then what are we doing? Just maybe if we're drafting off projections, and then we determine whose projections are the highest. But at the end of the day, it comes down to football. And I think quarters probably does decrease the amount of variance because if you're doing best ball and you were to lose Saquon, well, I mean, Noah didn't make a horrible pick by drafting Saquon there at 6 overall. Like, he had to do that. That was the right pick. He got unlucky that he got hurt. Now, thankfully, Noah has Qs 2, 3, 4 to come back from. So you're decreasing the variance that way. If you want to take it to the other extreme, maybe you have some contest where you're doing DFS for every single day. You're doing a DFS contest and you take the scores of those first 16, 17 weeks. And now you've got even less variance because, it's only, if you get a major injury, it only hurts you 1/16, 1/17 of the entire way.
Yeah.
Sure. I think you would lack the context though. That was something that has always been important to us in developing this, is just having the context of of 4 weeks. So in this case, like with best ball in particular, you're not a traditional best ball contest. You're first, you might get your money back for getting second place, and you're nothing. So if my player gets hurt, then whatever. Or if I make bad picks, I'm just encouraged to take on risk.
Yep.
Whereas with this, if you finish in 12th, like all of a sudden your first place finish from last quarter has diminished in value quite a bit versus like you could. I'm curious to see if you did that at all, where you're like, hey, I need to have a balanced roster and really balance my risk portfolio in order to make sure that it's not just about finishing first because I already got a Q1 win in the bag. It's also about like making sure that I'm not in the bottom like quartile.
100%. And I think best ball roster construction is that important. If we go back to the draft board, you can see I actually really liked, Ben Gretch's draft, which is right to the right of me. But there was one thing that kind of, I wasn't a fan of, and that's taking those 3 running backs and not drafting any others after that. And when you're doing a strategy where the goal really, if you're just prioritizing first, everything else doesn't matter, that's a fantastic strategy. The numbers have all proven that out. But in a format like this where, hey, the difference between 5th and 6th is really a difference between 1st and 2nd as well, not counting that small, financial bonus, you need to provide some level of floor. And that's where I wanted to make sure getting, Zach Moss and Adrian Peterson down in that from a running back standpoint.
Right.
And then same thing with the 2 quarterbacks. In the previous quarter, I only drafted Josh Allen because end of the day, if Josh Allen got hurt, I got waivers. If he's not getting hurt, I'm not playing anyone else. In this format, you got to find what is that level of risk management because there's so many flex spots. So I don't want to go 3 quarterbacks like I'll often do in a normal best ball, but I've still got to at least provide myself some level of, floor or safety net, especially given what's going on with the game's rescheduling.
Right. Oh, that's sharp, man. I would echo that from an overarching game theory standpoint. Once you've banked the 12 points, that you have to have some form of floor to ensure that, this isn't your standard best ball contest where you're just swinging for the full 101 finish,
Yep. And the inverse for, I think it's a little too early now, but I think after 2 quarters, if you've got some teams that are near the bottom, it probably makes sense for them next quarter. I don't want to give too much. I mean, like, they should probably start stacking hard. Like, they should be going for probably 2 or 3 teams and just saying, hey, I know that I need to hit hard and I need to probably finish in the top 2 or 3, maybe 2 times in a row to get into that final top 3 for the period.
Right.
Was that a message for Denny Carter or?
I have no idea what you're talking about.
I'll make sure he gets it. Who's your favorite player in FFWS besides yourself?
Let's see.
If it's easier, here's a better question. Who's your least favorite FFWS player?
My favorite is definitely have to be the collective of just Scoundrels Children. Just all together. I feel like they really provide a level of heart and just goodness to the team.
Yeah.
And then from a real world standpoint, I actually know Wade fairly well. He's another Richmond guy as well, and know him from some of the higher stake streets. But great guy there. So from a personal standpoint,
Very
and then
cool.
the others I know from industry and all. And it really is just a great group of people. It's great to get a chance to actually interact with a lot of them because some of them I've been seeing in the best ball streets forever. Some of them it's just through Twitter, having correspondent. Maybe I bought a physical digital currency from one of those guys. The good stuff.
Well, you did mention that you were back in the days of drafts. You were the only one waiting outside for everyone else to play. So I'm glad we got some friends for you to play with. And you don't have to draft 30,000 times to get them.
There you go.
You just had to ask us to create a game. That's all you needed to do.
Many men spend their lives playing DFS, never to realize it wasn't the money they were after. It's the friendships.
It's the friendship. Yeah, that's true. It's true. Men just want a hug. That's what it is.
That's what the FFWS is for, right?
Yeah. That's why they play sports. It's an excuse to be close to each other without questions.
Justin, I wasn't gonna ask because I'm sitting on a couple man's coins myself here. From the blockchain expert over there, what is the physical crypto the man's coin trading at right now?
It's only ever trades at $69.42.
My man.
That's awesome.
I love it.
I'll take 2.
All right. Dan, you want to cue this man up for some questions or what?
Yeah, well, that's a good segue. We talked a little bit about blockchain. I'll be honest, I don't get it. From what I remember, when I was a kid, wallets and chains made you a loser. So what's changed in the last 20 years? And give me an update. Like, what's a blockchain?
Yeah, wallets and chains still make us losers. It's fine. It's just now a digital version. No, high level blockchain technology. So I take it from an enterprise standpoint. I work with a lot of the Fortune 500 companies and help them along their digital strategies. And with blockchain technology, it's an opportunity for companies that are trying to improve their data transparency, their data flow when you're working with multiple parties. So you have, for example, let's say the supply chain. You've got a lot of companies, organizations that are working together, and there's just not much visibility into the actual data. There's maybe a lettuce that ends up going bad, and we need to find out where it is. Right now, that process would be a whole bunch of emails and pings and texts and calls to try to figure out and collect all that information. If you have the ability to make a network and put it on a blockchain technology, within minutes, everyone can see, okay, this is where the actual bad shipment went bad. This is where it actually went out to, so we can take them off the shelves here, find this supplier, amend it, and fix that solution. And it started off financial services, and now we see just about every industry actually touching it. And now I'm just making a work pitch, so I'm done with this.
Yeah, no, I didn't understand any of that. So that was for our viewers, not for me. No, I'm really excited to have you in the league for that purpose. It'll be interesting to see as we develop this concept in this product, if we can leverage some of the members in the league and what they're good at as well. I see this as kind of like a platform in some senses. So it'll be exciting to see what you can add here and there. Are you a deep V guy? Deep V neck guy? I thought I saw in the
that was such a deep V. I love that shirt. Sometimes you just gotta let the hair hang out. Right now, I'd say it's a soft V, but if I'm going full Minshew, I gotta go, full deep V.
Yeah, it's quite that's a lot of confidence, man. That's a lot of confidence. I have to commend you for that. When did you buy your first deep V, and like who recommended it to you? How did you get how did you become the person that bought a deep V?
Well, I live in Florida.
That must be it. So West Coast or East Coast? Which one's the best coast?
West Coast has the warmer weather. It has the more chill people of Florida. You don't have the Miami's got all just the hustle, the bustle, the South Beach. Yeah. We've got the better beaches, the chill, the boating, the warm water, and it's. But to be honest, I think the deep V, and I think that might be one of my only ones. But it's a gift, and the thing is, when the girlfriend and now the fiance gets the deep V, she tells you look good in it, so you think you look good in it, and then there's this false sense of confidence, and you're just this ecosystem. And during COVID, just stuff gets a little crazy.
Yeah,
I have a bunch of deep Vs I don't wear anymore for that reason.
Can you ship them to Florida?
Yeah, they're coming.
I got a guy. I
got this great tank. It's got a logo that says FFWS on it right here.
Yeah. Hey.
You better see that in South Beach.
That might just be showing too much skin for a little video.
This is the t-shirt version, but this is what he's talking about. You actually can't get these anywhere, so don't ask. Fantasy Football World Series. This is the t-shirt version. They're going for $69,420. $69.420. And we want all 420 cents. Don't leave one out.
We'll trade one man's coin for it, though.
There you go.
That'll do.
I expect next time the random person of the draft, the random player, the prize is $69.42.
Yeah. So I'm just curious, like part of the reason we started this thing is just because we're very interested in like your mindset and what makes a player good. So I guess just this is kind of an odd question, but maybe talk about how fantasy football decision making has turned into like life decision making? How have you changed your processes in that regard? How have you maybe made a different decision here or there? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's honestly probably a positive feedback loop where the way that I live my life impacts my fantasy football decision making, and then the decision making as I spend more time on that goes to start impacting the life. And I mean, you think of the world we live in right now, and just from like a risk tolerance and expected value, every decision I make on whether or not it's worth it for me to, make this move during COVID or travel in this situation, I think those are type of risk tolerance and expected value that probably I'm also taking into effect for DFS. I think from a from a data standpoint, and obviously there's so much about politics and election going on right now and polls, but just being able to understand from a range of outcomes, being able to understand variance, that you can still take that process mindset and you might have taken that right process, even though the result doesn't end up as you've expected. I think those things just kind of permeate through on a daily life standpoint, and it's the number one thing that I've really been focusing on from a personal standpoint during all this is prioritization. How you spend your personal time, how you spend your professional time, who you spend it with, what you unfortunately have to say no to just because it doesn't meet a top priority. And I think that's something I struggle with, but I've really put a passion and focus on trying to improve. I prioritized my prioritization.
Yeah. Prioritizing. It's a prioritization inception. I like it.
There you go.
I think I agree with you. I think that one of the ways that this, like, just moving into fantasy football and making it like a big part of my life, I think, is that it's changed I am a Seahawks fan. I'm still a Seahawks fan. I went to the Super Bowl that they won. It was fantastic. I got to go to New York with my dad and do that. Just a great time. And I wouldn't trade my fanhood for anything, I don't think, like, because it was such a good thing in my life, like a community thing growing up. But I will say, like, and this is no disrespect to people who are this way, but when you're so locked into a certain like candidate or political system or whatever, you can sometimes be blind to like all of the other things that are happening. And so when I'm a Seahawks fan, I'm super excited about Chris Carson. And then, but as a fantasy football player, I know he's fragile because he's probably not like, he's not the best runner in the league. So I think it's just kind of changed so people have asked me a little bit about like, hey, who are you voting for? People want to know your opinion. And more, like, I find myself saying, I don't have an opinion. Like, I don't. It is what it is. My job is to consider all the factors, and my role is as a dad and as a husband. Like, I have to make the best decisions for my family and for myself first and foremost, before I'm ever worried about what's happening in like Washington or anywhere else. Like, do I advocate for good things and for people to be treated fairly? Yes, like, absolutely. I love people, man. But at the same time, like, if I'm spending all my time getting so wrapped up in being a Seahawks fan, then I'm not going to make good decisions from my fantasy football team, which is like how I make my money.
Yep.
Well, on the side, at least for now. But
I think you bring a great point. I think I would raise it up a level to being able to say, I don't know, is such a valuable skill.
Yeah.
And I think with DFS, that's more important than ever. You have to accept what you don't know and then be able to, make steps towards at least trying to improve your process or improve your amount of information around that subject. And in DFS, it's a game. So we accept that there's low risk. If you don't know something, it's not embarrassing. There's a low risk situation, and you try to take steps toward that. And I think in other parts of life, a lot of people at work, they don't have the comfort, they don't have the ability to say, I don't know, because they're concerned about how it's going to look. But at the end of the day, that's probably one of the strongest things you can do, as long as you follow that up with, but I'm going to do this to make steps towards figuring that out. I'm going to try, I'm going to look up, I'm going to do research, I'm going to do whatever it is. Accepting that I don't know is just a state. It's just a point in time. Right now, I don't know, but that doesn't change about in the future. But if you give the wrong information, if you take a hard stance and you're not willing to change off that, that is far more detrimental than taking that initial one-time stance of, I don't know right now.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that.
Take lock. And that's the most applicable thing associated with fantasy football is take lock. It's just being like, oh, I think this guy's bad and he's going to be bad forever. Well, no, he can get better. He can find a better situation. He can play the slot. All of a sudden, he can play whatever. And that transferable skill associated with that and pushing it towards life, I mean, speaks volumes, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, and often, obviously at least on social platforms, and I think even in families and stuff like that, people are being chide or trying to be drawn into arguments. And for me, it's I'm too busy learning, and I have kids to love and a wife to love, and everything is happening right here. We're all in the same house all the time. So I don't have time. I literally don't have the energy or the time to argue a perspective that I know is going to change probably at least in a minor way in the course of the next weeks, months, whatever. As long as I'm putting time and energy into learning, then it's going to change. So all that time I just spent arguing was just time that I wasted on something that I'm going to change in a week or a month. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I agree with you. I think perspective on how you're prioritizing your life is huge because you're going to look down the road 10 years later and you're going to be like, hey, I'm really good at making people mad or having an argument or playing video games or whatever. And I don't know my daughter that well or whatever it is,
Yo, let's lighten it up. We'll go rapid fire here. I got 4 in a row to start, and then Dan can jump in with a couple, and then I got 4 in a row to end, and let's call it a night kind of deal. We've taken up too much of your time. Go watch the end of that Rays game.
I think we tied it up.
Oh, there we go.
3-3.
All right, here we go. This is the who's more washed section. All right? Who's more washed?
I hope it's players and not actually competitors in the FFWS.
Who's more washed? Breeze or Brady?
Oh, I'm a Tampa guy. I got to go with Breeze.
Okay. Who's more washed, Pete or Pat?
There it is. Pat still brings stuff to the table. Pete, you got the humor aspect.
Who's more washed, Lev Bell or David Johnson?
Le'Veon Bell to the Chiefs now. I think that's the news. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen there. But David Johnson just doesn't have it. I think there was a little excitement after that first week, but I think that was false.
Fair enough. All right, Leone or Gretsch?
I think they're just fantastic.
All right, go Dan.
You could trade your franchise's first-round picks with another franchise for the next decade. Which one would you choose?
I will give I would like to get the Redskins picks because that ownership is going to continue to provide me with top of draft picks. The Redskins. Sorry, the Washington football team.
Washington. Oh yeah, we're gonna have to edit that out.
The Redskins picks, you get 0 picks, bud.
That's why.
Sweet selection.
You call yourself a liberal? I mean, you can't do that. You can't do that. Favorite baseball player? This one is multiple choice. Actually, this will work better if I ask the questions. Michael Jordan, Russell Wilson, Jim Thorpe, Deion Sanders.
Russell Wilson.
Absolutely, that's what I was going to say too. I've seen a couple of highlights of him playing second base. I don't know if you knew that, but he played second base. And my goodness, throws to first were amazing.
He's a good Richmond, Virginia guy as well. He would play in some of the flag football games during that time between Wisconsin and heading to I guess what was it? Yeah, NFL draft.
NC State.
Yeah. Fun fact: Jim Thorpe actually played six baseball seasons in the 1920s or whatever. Is Jay Leno's face too big?
I think his neck is too small.
What's your what fictional character has influenced you the most?
God, I prefer nonfiction. I really don't have anything. My favorite book as a kid was always The Giver, and I think that had so maybe the person who grew up and the old man who's just sitting at the stump at the end. That was just something that always kind of sat with me as do good. Just be good.
Yeah, be good. I like it. Favorite idiom to use when you're hanging out with your friends?
It's less of an idiom, and usually when I tell a just bad joke, I'll just sip. And it's just kind of trying to become a mantra.
Love it. Sip and wait, man. Sip and see. That's it for me. Do you have any questions for us?
Oh, I got one more. Let me give 3 more.
One more. We got one more.
Yeah.
All right, this is the last 3, okay? Who's better at football? All right? Alexander Madison or Mike Boone?
It's not the preseason, so I got to go Madison.
Boo. Wrong. Okay, Tony Pollard or Ezekiel Elliott?
I got a lot riding on Zeke. I think Tony's just a little, he's a fanboy. Noah is going to disagree with me here.
Sorry, wrong again. Tony Pollard.
Yeah,
and,
you're getting a
who's
lot
better at
wrong.
football, Gardner Minshew or Ryan Fitzpatrick?
That's a
Gotta go with
favorite
mustache.
Wrong.
Mustache over beard.
Wrong. They're both amazing.
Wow. 0-3 to finish it out. We're probably not going to have you back on the show, just mostly because you got a lot of those questions wrong.
I'm just going to take a contrarian viewpoint for once.
Hey, man, this has been really cool. This has been a blast. Thanks for doing this. Thanks for putting up those pictures on the wall so we had something to look at in the background. I appreciate that for sure. That's it for me. Deserved victory.
Tell the people where they can find you, because you need some more followers. You need some more attention. People, this guy is so sharp. Follow this guy. Where can they find you?
It's true. I'm probably going to lose a lot of followers from that political conversation, so maybe I'll gain a couple here too. At Justin Herzig, so you can see the name on the screen. Get rid of the space, and that's my Twitter.
Beautiful.
Awesome.
All right. Appreciate you being here. Congrats on the Q1 win. Good luck going forward here, and we hope to talk soon.
Cheers. This is fun. Talk to you later.
Yeah. Thanks, Justin.